because we're honing in on one area of movement in the body, I adore that it speaks to every student in the room, no matter what the expression in their body is or those habits in their bodies are. It's so empowering to see people with completely different levels of mobility and strength be able to get something, their thing, from a class without having to say 20 different things to 20 different people.
Welcome back to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Reika and I am your host. I hope you're having a great day as you're listening to this podcast. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back and listening to this week's episode. And if you are a new listener, I want to say welcome. Welcome to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. This podcast was created so that I can interview full-time yoga teachers from all over the world to share their journey, their challenges that they have overcome, and how they make a living doing what they love, which is teaching yoga for most of us in the podcast. But I do interview people who work in the yoga industry but may not be teaching full-time. I have also interviewed people who are a part-time teachers, so I try to highlight different stories and different journeys. And I hope listening to their journeys can make you feel inspired, or that you're not alone in the world of trying to make a living as a yoga teacher. And it is tricky. It's not easy to be a full-time teacher, and that's why I started this podcast. So we can learn from one another, we can get inspired from one another, and also highlight that everyone's journey is so different. So there's no one right way to be a full-time yoga teacher. And I try to highlight stories of real yoga teachers, meaning they're not all famous celebrity yoga teachers, or they're not influencers on Instagram. These are real life yoga teachers who are doing what they love and making a living out of it, or trying to make a living out of it. And I think these stories are underrepresented in the social media and in the world. And I really hope to be interviewing real, authentic, yoga teachers who are just like us, who are just like you, who are listening to this podcast. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying it. I am enjoying producing episodes every week, and I get to interview amazing and interesting yoga teachers from across the world. So that's been really fun for me as well. I do have a couple of announcements before we start this week's episode. A first announcement is I am excited to announce that application for my mentorship program is now open. So I opened the door for applications for my mentorship program for yoga teachers just a handful of times a year. Each module is 4 months long. So the next module will be from May until August. And this is a group mentorship program for yoga teachers. So some of the things that's included in the program once you join the program is that we have monthly yoga philosophy discussions. We have monthly yoga book club discussions. We usually pick one book that we read over the 4 months, so you can be reading slowly. I know we all have busy lives, so I know reading one book per month is a challenge for me. So we go slow. We read one book per every 4 months. It's a yoga related book that we usually read, and we meet up once a month to talk about it. We also do pranayama and meditation class once a month. We also have time for Q&A, and this is a time where a group of yoga teachers, the community, kind of really get to support one another as well as get guidance from one another. And we talk about how our teachings are going, and also how is our yoga practice going. There's also opportunities to sign up for one-on-one session with me, and this is a moment where you get to ask questions or bounce ideas around that is very specific to you, anything that's going on for you in your teaching life, or any specific questions that you might have that is very specific to you. We also have practice teaching sessions, whether you want to practice teach asana class, meditation class, pranayama class, or maybe you want to practice leading a yoga philosophy discussions, or you want to practice teaching a yoga philosophy concept, or could be anatomy that you want to practice teaching. So this is a great opportunity to practice teach in the safe, supportive environment and get really useful feedback from me as well as your community members. There's also opportunity to deepen your anatomy and alignment knowledge as well. And I invite guest teachers every month. So this module from May till August, I have an exciting guest teachers lined up. First, a teacher, Ja, who I interviewed on the podcast before, he is coming on to teach us history of yoga from decolonized lens. And I also have AJ, who is a yoga teacher and full-time physical therapist, who's coming to teach us workshop that is more related to physical body anatomy and biomechanics. And I am confirming one more guest teacher who's going to come and talk to us about injury management. And I will be leading 1 month with a workshop as well. And on top of all of this, you will also get unlimited access to my online yoga studio. So you can come take my online yoga classes anytime. You can watch the recordings from my on-demand library at your own leisure. So these are what's included in the mentorship program. But what I love the most is the community aspect. We get to learn with one another. We get to bounce ideas around, encourage each other, share resources, and maybe even job opportunities that comes up. So it's a wonderful space to be in a community of yoga teachers who are so kind, supportive, and like-minded. So if you're interested in this mentorship program, I'll put the link on the show notes of my landing page for my mentorship, as well as a link to the application form if you want to apply. The commitment is 4 months long. 4 months is one module, and if you can only sign up for 1 or 2 months, I do make an exception. Message me and let me know if you have any questions in regards to my mentorship program. I'm really excited for the next module, and running this mentorship is one of my passion projects from all the different offering that I have. I do teach a lot of in-person classes, group classes, private, corporate. I do teach online classes, I do teacher trainings, I do a lot, but mentorship, I would say, is probably my favorite offerings. It's what fills me up the most. It's what I enjoy the most, leading, facilitating, and organizing this group. So I hope you can join this amazing group. It's for yoga teachers who want to deepen their knowledge, but also want to live their yoga. It's not just to become a better skilled teacher, although we do that, we cover that, but it's for how can we live our yoga? How can we live in alignment with our yogic value and teach and live our lives and stay true to the yogic value and live the path of yoga? So we have really great, juicy discussions and topics. So if this is something you're interested in, I highly, highly recommend you applying for the program. Second announcement is about my ethical yoga retreat in Nicaragua that is happening in July of this year, 2025. It's from July 12th through the 19th. I have one room open because somebody canceled. They could no longer join the retreat. That's why we have one room opened up. The room can be for one person or two, whether it's with your friends or your partner. The price will depend on whether it's a 1 or 2 person joining the room. But I'll put the link to the show notes to the retreat if you want to check it out. What I think is special about this retreat is that what I felt like was missing in the yoga retreat world is retreat that actually cared about giving back, retreat that actually cared about running it ethically and leave a positive impact in the community that we are visiting. I wasn't interested in just being the visitor and just staying in a fancy place and enjoy the beauty of the country and leaving. I really wanted a retreat that incorporated learning about the country, the culture, cultivating relationship with people who's from this community that we are visiting, and how can we visit with least amount of harm. So that is why I am partnering with 2 local NGO for this retreat, where part of the money that participants pay to register for this retreat will go directly to the NGO as a donation, as well as part of the activities that's included in the retreat is volunteering for these organizations. Besides that, we will be practicing yoga every day in the morning vinyasa and afternoon yin. There will be some fun activities like hiking and sweat lodge. And they will be underlining theme to this retreat. The name of the retreat is called Align with Purpose. So I hope we can all think and reflect a little bit of how can we live more in alignment with who you truly are, and also how can we live more in alignment with the world, and what is your role and purpose in that. So that's kind of the discussions and topic that I would love to explore during this retreat. So if you're interested in joining me on this yoga retreat, it's happening in July of 2025. I'll put the link to the information on the show notes, so please let me know if you ever have any questions. Let's talk about this week's episode. This week's episode, we are back with all the SmartFlow certified yoga teachers again, Bianca, June, Dre, and myself. This week, we are having a conversation about what is it like to teach a SmartFlow class? How is it possibly different from other type of yoga classes? And what are some experiences that students may have when they take a SmartFlow yoga class? So I hope you enjoy our conversation about SmartFlow and teaching SmartFlow yoga classes. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'll put my contact information on the show notes. I will speak to you on the other side.
Welcome back to June, Dre, and Bianca. Thank you so much for coming back to chat with me about SmartFlow.
Hello.
Hi. Last week we talked about how we found out about SmartFlow and what is it about SmartFlow that really made us want to pursue this method, why we love it so much, and why we wanted to become a SmartFlow teacher. And I guess this week I would love to chat about how is it like teaching a SmartFlow yoga class compared to other styles, because I'm sure we all taught differently before SmartFlow. And what might be the experience of as a teacher teaching SmartFlow, but also what might be as experience of a student coming into SmartFlow class, and what kind of classes are they going to experience versus other type of yoga classes that's out there. So I don't know, maybe Bianca, do you want to talk about how's your...
Sure. Yeah. I'll just say the first thing that comes to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is the sequencing and the ease of the system. And it really helps me in terms of making choices around what I want to work on and then finding sequencing within the movement principles. So, I mean, sometimes I approach it a different way. Sometimes I'll approach it like I'm interested, I'll start with it within my own body, within an inquiry, and where is that leading? And that eventually will lead to like working within a certain MP. And other times I'll know I want to work on a certain MP, and then I'll have a system within which it's easier for myself to find sequencing, because at least my brain works this way and my body works this way. When there's this like wide open expanse of all the different things I could do, I can get overwhelmed with the choices. And SmartFlow as a system helps me to narrow down and focus.
Yeah.
Create my sequencing drishti so that I can stay really focused and on point for the class. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yes, definitely. I love that. And I feel the same way, but maybe you said NP, and maybe explain to the listener what NP is in a
Oh, yes.
nutshell.
Sorry. Yes, of course. So MP is a movement principle. And within the SmartFlow system, there are different movement principles based on how anatomically our bodies move. So we have MPs that are based, MP2s, which are, for example, that are based in the hips, in the different planes of movement within the hips, within the pelvis. We have MP4s, which are different. We have MP4 A, B, and C, for example, that is based on the movement within the shoulder girdle, upper back thoracic area. So yeah, so those are examples of what MPs are. So, like for example, we'll say, okay, I'll be working on MPs, and that has to do with pelvis in the transverse plane. And so now we're looking at twists, and I'll look at how do I find an inquiry around that? Like, how do we explore it as I explore with my students, so that they can understand the principle of the pelvis in the transverse plane and rotation, and how that affects the rest of the spine. And then how do I develop a sequencing that not only that starts with that inquiry and then builds intelligently, systematically to maybe a standing pose, maybe a supine pose, maybe a sitting pose, but the MP is always the same. So twists in all these different ways within the body, but the MP, once it's established in the body, now we can put it into all these different situations and it still works.
Yeah, that was a nice, beautiful summary of what movement principles are. So I guess the first point that Bianca brought up is how it makes it a little bit easier for us to focus and target our how we teach and what we want to target or theme or focus on each class. As a teacher, it makes it quite easier for us to like, okay, we're going to focus on this movement principle today, rather than having like a scattered ideas and trying to fit in 20 different poses in one class. That doesn't really make sense. So I like that. Definitely, I feel the same way. It's much easier to show up in a class and be like, okay, this is our focus today. This is a movement principle we're focusing on. And it makes sequencing really smooth, and I wouldn't say, well, easier to kind of categorize different poses and create a sequence that is in alignment with that movement principle.
Or often multiple movement principles, right?
Wow. Yeah. What about you, Dre? How do you find teaching SmartFlow?
Well, I would first love to just elaborate on that benefit of focusing from a practitioner's perspective. Well, I guess two things. One, as a teacher, I think the differentiation of how many movement principles we have to choose from, and that combination between movement principles and, all the classical poses and modern adaptations of classical poses that we teach lends itself. Not only is it like a focused, and I wouldn't necessarily say easier, but I would say clearer through line of a class, of an intention and of an experience that we're exploring in the body in different orientations. But it keeps us from doing the same thing over and over, teaching the same thing over and over. It's easier for me to remember what movement principle I taught over the last several weeks than it is to remember, so I'm choosing something new. So we're
Yeah,
always
totally.
moving things around to something new. Than it was before SmartFlow for me, of like, oh, I don't know, I taught half moon last week and did I teach it? Whatever it was. So I find that it's like it helps either by signaling what you always gravitate towards. Oh, I'm always gravitating towards the twos, or I'm never doing this one thing. It's like more illuminating because it is so focused for you to see what your habits are, even in teaching, to close those gaps. And then I think it also just brings this freshness of, especially for an advanced, well, I'm gonna say long time practitioner who's got familiarity with a lot of these shapes. It brings this freshness of inquiry into the poses, into the practice, just by way of the system. And then I think from a person, Bianca, I'm sure being super hypermobile, but through my like postpartum and pregnancy stages, anytime I would go practice a non-smart flow class that didn't have that clarity, it felt really unsafe in my body to be going from open to closed to this to that to something that used to be fun and creative and dynamic now felt less safe in my body. And so I found this safety through the smart flow system.
June, do you want to share? What is it like to teach a SmartFlow yoga class for you?
I think what Bianca said really sums up everything for all of us. How it's so much easier as a teacher to actually teach different sequences by focusing on the MPs. But then I think the most interesting is hearing the students' feedback, because the students are not teachers. And the students will come to me and tell me, the teacher's class not quite making sense to the body. But then when they come to my class, they feel great after. Like it makes sense to them. And that's always very assuring that, oh yeah, I must be teaching something right. And the students felt challenged, actually very challenged compared to many other forms of classes. And they will be telling me, oh yeah, I might do a vinyasa class, but it's like cardio. I'm just flow and flow and flow, just cardio. But your classes are like slow, but flow. But we work 10 times harder. Like you have so little pulses there, but then we're working so much harder. So I think that's the feedback I heard from students regarding a SmartFlow practice or regarding just a vinyasa class practice.
I love that, June. I find the same. I find that the clarity that we have as teachers about the system resonates with our students as it does. And I get that. I get very similar feedback from students about the appreciation of the clarity and how it feels so good in their bodies. Right.
Yeah. I think I have heard some of the like common feedback that I get from students that I know it's because of I'm teaching SmartFlow method. And students, a lot of students may not know what SmartFlow is, or I might be teaching at a studio where the class is just called Vinyasa. I'm not allowed to call it SmartFlow. But I think the feedback I get are I appreciate that you actually teach the pose, not just name it and just like move on, you know? Sometimes when it's like really fast flow, I've been in a class where a teacher will just say, inhale, reverse warrior, exhale, extended side angle, inhale, triangle. Like they're not really teaching the pose. They're just kind of naming it and connecting the poses. But the feedback I get is that they appreciate that I'm actually teaching the poses, like what to do in the pose or how to activate the effort and return to center, those kind of cues. Like what June said, there aren't that many poses. It's a little bit more simplified in that way, but there's a streamline, there's this like common thread throughout the sequence of like there's a reason why each pose are put in its specific place in the sequence. And I think students who can feel that and notice that really appreciate. And another thing is, yeah, like some people say your class is difficult because sometimes I'm maybe challenging my students to try their pose in a different way that they haven't tried before. Maybe recruiting some muscles that they haven't really used in that pose before. Or maybe if they're so used to moving through poses, one breath, one movement, then they're not used to holding the poses for more than a couple breaths. So I think that's where kind of a challenge can come in for some students who's not used to that.
Yeah, I have one student who calls my classes sneakily difficult. I thought that summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, that sounds right. And anything else about teaching SmartFlow that you noticed, you appreciate, or maybe you find challenging?
Major thing for me about smart flow as a teacher is how the same language, effort and return to center. So for the listener, within each movement principle that Bianca shared, there are many iterations, but we'll call it one kind of continuum of an effort is moving you in one direction, and the return to center is moving you basically back towards Tadasana. So the effort moves you towards that movement principle, deepens it, intensifies it. The return to center balances it, stabilizes it, anchors it. And because we're honing in on one area of movement in the body, I adore that it speaks to every student in the room, no matter what the expression in their body is or those habits in their bodies are. It's so empowering to see people with completely different levels of mobility and strength be able to get something, their thing, from a class without having to say 20 different things to 20 different people.
Yes, Dre, totally. It's like a universal language.
It is. It is. And it's like each practitioner has their own sweet spot of those two things, right? One thing that's overworking, one thing that's underworking. And I think another thing you mentioned, Bianca, is like to the level that we understand that, and we understand that as teachers so much more deeply when we see it applied to different types of bodies, different types of people. So I feel like not only have I learned more about myself and movement and the practice in my own body, but I'm helping illuminate that for people that have completely different experiences in their physical body. And I'm learning more through them through this focusing on a system, on a pick a focus of an MP, really thoroughly understand the efforts in return to centers and be able to communicate them in a way that somebody can try them on and feel them in their body.
Well said.
That was beautifully said. I like how you explain the effort and effort and return to center. Well, thank you all so much for sharing about your experience of teaching SmartFlow. Is there anything else anyone want to say before we close this topic? Well, I think I love hearing all of your experiences because I feel like I completely understand. And it's nice to know that we are teaching in a way that hopefully is making a difference to our students. And I remember one time Annie said, as a teacher, we are the alarm clock for our students, and we are there to wake them up out of their habits and patterns and bring them back to now, the present moment. And I think hearing all of you talk about teaching SmartFlow, I think we are doing that. So nice to hear from all of you about your experience of teaching SmartFlow.
Thank you. Thank you, Reika.
Thank you all for coming on.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode. It's a conversation that all the SmartFlow certified teachers are having about what it's like to teach SmartFlow. I hope you were able to hear in our voice how much we love and adore SmartFlow and how much respect we have for this method. And of course, to Annie Carpenter, who is our teachers and who developed this method. It's a very, very intelligent method. And I hope you can feel that when you take my class and wherever you take my classes from, if you ever taken my class, whether it's in person or online. So if you're curious about SmartFlow, you can reach out to any of us and probably take one of our classes wherever you are. This week's episode concludes the series on SmartFlow, so I hope you enjoyed us talking about SmartFlow. I really want to spread SmartFlow to the world because it's such a beautiful way to practice. And if you have any questions, I'm sure one of us will be more than happy to answer your questions, but you can always reach out to me. On Instagram, my handle is @Reika Yoga or through my website, which is www.reikayoga.com. Remember that application for my mentorship program is now open. It's going to begin in May. And read more about the program on the website and reach out to me if you have any questions. I would love for you to join us. Lastly, I have one room left on my ethical yoga retreats in Nicaragua. If you want to come to this beautiful northern beach in Nicaragua and kind of unplug and get away from the busy world that we live in and also travel in a way that is meaningful and ethical, then I would encourage you to check out my upcoming yoga retreat in Nicaragua. So that is it for me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will speak to you next week.